different types of training equipment that we use. So the first thing that we use for training dogs is treats. Majority of the time whenever we use dog treats, we like to use the treat called Bill Jack. It comes in a 5-pound frozen bag, and then you leave it thawed out, and it's really squishy and really easy for the dogs to chew fast, so you're not waiting for your dog to crunch on some treats before you can move on to the next command. The other thing that we'll be using is a treat pouch, which is important so that the dog's not staring at food in your hand while you're training. You want them to see the picture without any food, so we use a treat pouch. We like to use a silicone treat pouch because they're easier to use. This one has a clip that would just go on your belt loop. It has a magnetic top that automatically goes back together, so it's very easy to grab the treats. We don't usually like anything that has a drawstring because they can be difficult to use and the food falls out a lot. The first type of training collar is a slip collar. This is something that we start every dog out on. This is something that anytime we're teaching anything new, this is the piece of equipment that we like to use. A slip collar has a little loop at the end so you can clip a regular leash to it. You can also just have your dog wear it around the house so that they have something that you can grab a hold of to guide them wherever you need to, or to get them off the couch, or to stop them from jumping on you. It has this little tab, and you cannot normally find these online. We get these special ordered, but it has a little tab so I can size it to whatever size I need to. The way that this fits, and this goes for all of our training collars or anything the leash is attached to, it's up high on the neck directly behind the ears. And the reason we do that is because it's almost like it's on your dog's head, and wherever the head goes, the body's going to follow. So when we're trying to teach your dog something new and move them in new directions and teach them about different types of pressure on the collar, this is the piece of equipment that we want to use, and we want it up high directly behind the ears. Now, if a dog learns how to do something like the command place, for example, which is don't come off of your bed until told free. So let's say the dog is on place, they know place, they understand it, and they are deciding to come off of the bed. And we are ready to give a correction, which is a pop and release of the leash. If we give the dog a correction on a slip over and over again, and the dog is not fazed by it, the dog is still making the same mistakes, the dog is not responding to the correction, then we'll know that it's time to maybe move on to a different collar than the slip collar. The next type of collar that we might try is called the Star Mark Pro Training Collar. It's made of plastic. You clip the leash to the metal ring here, and it still again fits up high on the neck directly behind the ears. So it sits up there, and whenever you give a correction on the leash, it's a pop and release still, and you can see that this collar will get smaller as you do that. It is not a choke. It is a mild just pressure against the plastic is just a little more slightly irritating than just a flat rope. So when you do that pop and release, when the dog comes off of the bed and then they get back onto the bed and they stop making the mistake, then I would say this collar works better for this dog. Now if I did that and the dog still was not responding to the correction, then I would move on to a prong collar. We use Herm Springer prong collars, one that has a divider in the middle. It's stainless steel. It's not any kind of cheap metal that might irritate the dog's skin. It is the same as the Star Mark, up high on the neck, directly behind the ears. You clip the leash onto it, and then it does a pinch, an actual pinch motion. It's also called a pinch collar. That's something that is very similar to the way dogs correct each other, or the way a mom dog would correct a puppy is to nip at them, to show them that they're being inappropriate and that's not allowed. So if we've tried the slip and we've tried the Star Mark and we've found that they're not effective, then we're gonna move on to the prong collar. It's a pop and release, and you'll hear the metal kind of go like that. Now, different distractions might require different types of corrections. So maybe in the home, my dog is perfectly fine on a slip collar and listens fine in the house. But when we go for a walk and the distractions are higher, I might need my prong collar. So many dogs might use several pieces of equipment. And what I have in my hand right here is a little tab leash is what it's called. And it just stays clipped onto your dog's collar. So if you're in the house and you send your dog to the place bed and they come off before told, you can just pop and release and put your dog back on. You don't have to have a leash dragging around or having to go find it when you do put your dog on place. Now, if your dog has very sensitive skin and the prong collar irritates your dog's skin, we do have something called a neck wrap, and this is very large. This would be like for a Great Dane. But it just is a little, almost like a scarf. Your dog wears it on their neck, and then the prong collar would go on the outside of it, so it's not irritating the skin at all. Now, if your dog has a bite history or a dog aggressive history, it's likely that we would recommend muzzle training. This muzzle brand is called Baskerville, and this again is like the size for a Great Dane, which is just ginormous. This one's a size 6. You want the dog to be able to breathe, pant, eat treats, and drink water out of the muzzle, which is why we like this brand called Baskerville. It goes behind the ears, this part goes behind the dog's eyes, and then you would take a regular flat collar and you would loop it through the end of the muzzle and have that around your dog so they couldn't paw and flip it off of their face. There we go. And then the last piece of equipment is an e-collar or a remote collar. We like to use a brand called e-collar Technologies. There are other brands that we will work with, like Sport Dog or Dogtra. But generally, those are the 3 brands that we will work with the client, and this is the brand that we actually sell ourselves. So e-collar Technologies, whenever you order a remote collar, it does not come with a fancy pretty collar like this bright pink one. It comes with a regular buckle collar, and it requires you to size it every single time you put it on your dog. We always order bungee quick snap collars. Has a bungee right here. It snaps, so I'm not constantly having to size and resize the collar. So we always use the bungee quick snap collars, and then an accessory that we use on majority of dogs, especially long-haired dogs. This is called contact pads. They're called wings. And it's just, you would replace the contact points on the receiver of this collar, and it just is usually more comfortable for the dogs to wear, what allows you to use lower levels on the remote. Another cool thing about this remote collar is that it is waterproof. I can press the button while my dog is swimming in the water. It's rechargeable. This one specifically has a half-mile range, but we have some that are a mile range or a 1/3 mile range option for smaller dogs. It also has a flashlight, so it'll blink, or you can press this button again and it'll stay on, which is nice for nighttime. It even has a 2-year warranty on it. It's a nice quality collar that's not going to accidentally, stimulate your dog at the wrong time. So the first thing that we do with this remote collar is we put it on the dog and we do not use it. We have them wear it for a couple days. And the reason for that is we don't want them to be collar smart, which would mean the dog knows, what the collar means, or the dog knows that if you show them this remote, they better listen. That is not the idea. I want them to think this is their regular collar, and this is just something that I always have on me and it's normal. I don't want to put my dog in a situation where when they're being bad, I show them the remote and they go, oh, okay, I'll stop. We don't want to use threats to get our dogs to listen. So we don't want the dog to be collar smart. Once they've worn this collar for a couple days, we'll do something we call finding your dog's working level. The working level is the lowest possible level your dog feels this at. So this remote has 100 levels. And every person and every dog is different. When I feel this remote collar on myself, I cannot feel it until level 7. The lowest I've ever had a dog feel it at would be level 4, and same for people. Level 4 has been the lowest level that I've had someone feel it. Now, if my working level is 7 and my husband's working level is 10, even though our levels are different, we are feeling the same thing. So just because levels are different doesn't mean the dog is feeling it more or anything like that. It's just everybody has a different sensitivity. And this is not a shock collar. It is an e-collar. It is with EMS. It is electronic muscle stimulator. This isn't going to have electricity flowing through and bolts flying, and all of the horrible things you would think you would see with a remote collar, or what they might have been back in the day. So once we find the dog's working level, and the way we find it is we just start at level 1 and we go up by one level, by one level, by one level, until the dog shows a physical sign that they felt it. Some dogs might scratch at their neck, they might be looking around to figure out where it's coming from. Some of them might sit down, the dog might stare at you, their ears might twitch. Very subtle things with their body language will show us that they can feel the stimulation. Once I know what the working level is, I'm going to lock the button down on that remote. So let's say I'm training a new dog and their working level is 10. I actually can lock my remote collar in on that level. So it's on level 10 now. And whenever I hold this down, you'll see that it happens as long as I'm holding down the button. It's set on continuous. So we will use the place command again for an example. If my dog is on the place bed and they decide to come off of the place bed, I would press the button while they're off the bed, and I would hold it down until the dog is back onto the bed. Then I would release it then. So what I'm doing is I'm teaching the dog at a very low level that they are in charge of when the stimulation happens, when it turns on, and they're in charge of shutting it back off again. Or another example would be recall. If I tell my dog to come here and I press this button, they will know that if I would like to shut off the stimulation, I'm going to come back. So once a dog understands how the stimulation will turn on and how to shut it off again, that's when we might not be using so much of a working level anymore. But the goal is to use the lowest possible level to train the dog and make them understand what the stimulation means. And the way we teach them is by pairing it with the leash. So when the dog comes off a place and we press this button, we would also be using the leash to guide them back to the bed, or maybe doing a pop and release correction and putting them back onto the bed, so that the dog will go, oh, okay, those two things are the same thing. Remote collar is always required anytime we do off-leash training, which includes recall, come back to me command. Because even if we teach a dog to come back to us, if the leash is not there, the dog can still decide to not listen to us. This is a safety net. This is, if my dog were running into traffic and my recall failed, at least I could turn this remote collar up. The highest level is 100, and I could press the button to stop my dog in its tracks to avoid it going into traffic or running toward a not dog-friendly dog, or whatever the situation might be. So this is the invisible leash, is what we like to call it. And it is a goal, maybe not for everybody, but it is a goal for most people. Your dog will not have to be on any of this equipment forever. Most people's ultimate goal is to not have any equipment on their dog, and that's awesome. And some people might not have that goal, and they might use this equipment for the rest of their dog's life, and that's fine too. If it works for your dog and it works for you, there's nothing wrong with that.